What's going on, everyone? It is Bill Carroll and P.J Kite. We're previewing Thursday Night Football, Cowboys at the Seahawks. What's going on, Bill? How are you doing?
It has been a very interesting day as part of a very interesting week, as part of an absolutely fascinating month of truly strange things. But we are here.
We are here. We're making it. We're even though we're staying busy, we're making it.
So far, so good.
Yep. So I have to ask, what do you think about the game tonight, Cowboys versus Seahawks in Dallas? What's
Yeah.
your
Well,
thoughts?
I think it'll be a fairly close game. Obviously, Dallas is the better team. If you look at Seattle by the numbers, right? They're a middle of the road in a lot of statistical categories. They're number 14 in terms of offenses, in terms of yards they gain per play. And I look at yards per play as much or more than points because points aggregates points you get any kind of way, right? So points you've
Right.
gotten off of special teams, points you've gotten from your defense. And a lot of times some teams will get points more easily than other teams. They'll get really good field position, things like that. Yards per play lets you know how effective an offense is consistently at achieving its objective, moving the football.
Right.
And it removes some of those extraneous things that can slant, points scored and things like that. So they are a slightly above average offense in terms of how well they move the football. And as a defense, unsurprisingly, or maybe surprisingly, I guess it depends what things surprise you. Uh, while they once again
Right.
are right, while they are once again solid in most areas, they don't stand out, right? They don't have a single thing you point and say, wow, they sacked the quarterback super well. Wow, they're really good at
Right.
this, really good at that. But solid, not embarrassing themselves. So let's go back once again to yards per play. And how are they at preventing the other team from moving the football? And so much as I just said, they're slightly above average at number 14. They are
Right.
slightly above that ranking. They're number 12 on defense on defending yards per play. They are
Wow.
5 point. They right. So they are like I said, middle. I told you sort of middle of the pack. A lot of areas. 5.2, 5.2 over the season, but 5.4 in the last 3 games. They need to tighten that up because that's one trending in the wrong direction. To put it in
Yeah.
perspective, the best defense in the NFL is the Baltimore Ravens. They average 4.2 yards allowed per play and 4.6 in the last 3. So they're also trending in the wrong direction, but still well above. I mean, even their worst outing is still very good because, as I said, you're looking at 5.2 for Seattle overall, and like I said, 5.4 in the last 3 games. So
Right.
the way this team is constructed, they need to be able to run the ball enough. They don't have to dominate, but they have to run the ball enough because they love to attack you and play action. And they're good at it, right? It's something that Gino's been good at, even his days with the Jets, though he may not have been super effective. He was most effective in play action. So that's
Right.
something I would say. For them to have a chance to hang around, make this game good, make this game interesting, they need to run the ball because that takes some of the sting out of that great Dallas pass rush.
Yeah.
Micah Parsons, of course, is an absolute animal. They have 2 or 3 other guys who are, very, very good as well. But he's clearly the big piece. And
Yeah.
then last but not least, they need to not allow big plays to the Dallas offense. If they can make Dallas have to sort of dink and dunk and dib and dab and carve away, they have a shot. But if Dallas
Right.
is able to get 20, 25, 35 yards at a shot,
Then
which
it's going to be rough for Seattle to make anything happen on. Yeah, it's gonna because when I look. Well, I'll let you finish and then I'll.
no, that was pretty much the point I was making. And then, I'd love to hear what your take is, and then we'll talk.
Yeah, I think with the Cowboys and the Seahawks, we look at the Seahawks and they're struggling, not too bad, but they are in the hunt for the playoffs. They're not out of it, but they're still not where they should be, and where they. Oh, geez, I need to. If I can share the link again. With the Seahawks are kind of they're there, but they're not where they should be, and with the Cowboys, they're just beating up on every team they play. But I think we have to take in consideration the fact that, hey, Zenny, how's it going?
I am doing double duty. I'm helping mom shop. It's actually triple duty. I'm helping mom shop. I'm driving a cart. I'm backing up, which is quadruple duty. And I need to turn around at her request, but I'm backing up. You know why? Because oddly enough, this is because
oh my goodness,
this is whoa. Sorry about that.
Second.
Yeah.
But
so
yeah, with Dallas, they're just beating up on everybody. But I think why, and this has been a point that everybody's talked about for a while now, is they're playing bad teams. They're playing they lost to the Cardinals, but they can't beat anybody over 500. Now, can they do that at home in a few weeks against Philadelphia? I think they can, but they have to be able to get over this hump. Whatever happened against San Francisco, they cannot do against Philadelphia. We know how Philadelphia is with that offense, with that defense, and I think Dallas will win.
Sorry, guys. Okay.
I think again is the fact that they're playing a mid team that's not great, but it's not awful either. They're just playing a mid team that yeah. So I think Dallas, but yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see how the game goes tonight.
I have a question.
Zenny, what's your thoughts on the game?
Well, my thought on the game is that the Seahawks are one good game plan away from getting back on track. And I mean, of course, you could say that with any NFL team, but look, some teams are missing two of their star wide receivers, like the Saints, right? So, so it's a little harder,
right?
But the Seahawks are not blessed with that problem, if you will. My point is that a lot of bad coaching, specifically, not designing their game plan to expect blitzes or hard pass rushes. And that's what the Seahawks have done. Now, let me give you a contrast of a team that didn't do that. The Green Bay Packers against, guess who, right? The Lions. And they had a brilliant Thanksgiving game plan that everybody should copy. Now, if the Saints don't copy it, Dennis Allen needs to be fired DOA, okay? Period, end of story. But bottom line is, if you're able to field 11 veteran NFL players of some level, then you can engineer a victory against the Cowboys. My issue with the Cowboys is, while I praise the installation of what they think a time passing game is, and I say that in italics, what they think a time passing game is, the problem is that they are prone to bouts of undisciplined passing, okay? And it catches them with a bad interception, sometimes in a timely fashion. Now, what's gotten them to this point in the season is their reduction of those plays, because, as much as I might say that, even with the current approach, boy, they were awful last year, okay? I mean, just terrible. And so I'm not 100% sold on the Cowboys yet.
Yeah.
As that team. But I think this contest and the margin of victory, if there is one, will be indicative of whether or not they're there. What do you think? What do you think, Bill?
Well, there's two things that jump out at me. So in terms of red zone touchdowns, right?
Right.
Dallas is number 6. They average when they get in the red zone, they get there fairly often. 2.3 red zone touchdowns per game. That's number 6 in the NFL. Seattle's number 19, tied at number 19 with 1.5. So they have to not only get in the red zone, but they have to actually come away with touchdowns. It's been great. You know, if you have Jason Myers in fantasy, he's been a very productive field goal kicker, but they're not going to win this game kicking field goals. They need to come away with touchdowns. Yeah. And, you know, obviously we all know that Dallas is the highest scoring offense in the NFL, right? They're at 31.5 points per game on the season, 42.3 in the last 3 games. Now, as was pointed out by my friend PJ, they've been playing a lot of bad teams. And they really do really pound on bad teams. Sorry to the Giants in particular, but they have really made a lot of hay against some of those bad teams. And whenever they play against a team that is good or even especially very good, you could see all of the cracks, all of the problems that Dallas has. And though the Seahawks are not a great team, they can attack those same problems, those same questions. One thing where these teams are identical in essence is in rush yards per play. They're both at 4.1. And that's below average. The worst is Tampa Bay at 3.3, but 4.1 is in the bottom quadrant of the NFL. The team that wins the battle of running the football does 2 things. One is, of course, you're more likely to possess the ball longer. And Seattle should want to possess the ball because the more explosive offense is Dallas's offense.
Right.
They are able to access more ways of getting big plays. And while they still have DK Metcalf, and they have some explosive players. I'm not saying they don't. Tyler Lockett's still very good. They are less able to access them. It's not as easy for them to dial those things up as it is for Dallas. Dallas has more different ways to get big plays.
Hey, one thing about that, Bill, that 4.1 yard average for the Cowboys might be a misnomer because if you consider your aforementioned statistic about their bleeding in points by the lead, one can make the argument that, hey, look, once they get a lead, when they run, it's sort of garbage running to eat the clock, right?
Well, here's what I will say to that. In the last 3 games, they're trending up. They're at 4.8 yards per carry in the last 3 games. So they're getting better at running the ball. They were really bad earlier in the year, though, but they've gotten better.
Here's the question. I don't expect you to know the answer to it, but I do think it's interesting. Were they worse when their points per game was worse? You see where I'm going with this, right?
I see where you're going with this, but I think it's 2 things. They did tweak the blocking scheme from last year's offense to this one. So I think early in the year, once again, as you and I all know, there's less time spent. The preseason's shorter. The contact practices are like 40% of what they were 30 years ago. So when you're installing anything, oh, yes. Oh, I mean, Zinni and I can remember when training camp went on for 2.5 months. But, you used to use training camp to get in shape. Guys would have summer jobs. Yeah. I'm not joking. They would teach gym or sell insurance or work for Anheuser-Busch or be assistant principals. I'm not even joking. These are some of the jobs. Gary Quazzo was a dentist. So these guys would in the offseason do their other job. And then they would come to training camp and get in shape. So training camp had to be long enough for guys to get in football shape. Now that's different because guys stay in shape all year round. And so you don't need training camps to be that long. But the point is that when you're installing something new or changing your offense or changing your defense, guys are still learning when the season begins nowadays. Where in the old days, you would have worked all that out because you had so many more practices, particularly contact practices, which are way down now.
That there used to be, and I believe there still is, a vast difference in how playbooks are written from team to team. And specifically, some organizations will have you write the play in as the season goes along. And so if they're still maintaining that practice, it's harder for them to be proficient at those plays because the way that they do them is such that coaching points that you may have put in yourself as a coach, rather than asking them to write the play in, and maybe you don't introduce it in the middle of a lecture, get lost. But if you write all the coaching points in as you can see them and your terminology laid out where it's easy to learn and memorize, and then you match it to a numbers stream, you're helping them. My point is this, to make my point very succinct. There are some coaches that don't know how to teach football. And unfortunately, a lot of them are actually head coaches right now. There you go.
Yeah,
I mean,
so
it's I don't want to leave the dead air, but
just one of the things that is different or most different is we talked about sort of some of the differences in how they run the football. So Brian Schottenheimer is very involved in the run game. Obviously, everyone who, football's a game of nepotism. And Brian Schottenheimer, obviously the son of Marty Schottenheimer, who was amongst the non-Hall of Fame coaches, one of the, he and Dan Reeves, I think, are the two highest in terms of career wins amongst non-Hall of Fame coaches who are eligible. I mean, there's guys like Belichick and Andy Reid and others who are not eligible because they haven't retired.
Right.
But they've run more in early downs, right? So that's gone up a few percentages from under the Kellen Moore days. Also, they have spread the ball around actually slightly less, though Rico Dowdell has recently upticked. So that's changed a little bit. But early in the season, they were just really two people in the running game were doing almost all of the work. And now they've brought a third back into the rotation and even a handful of carries for Deuce Vaughn in a blowout. But they are making a few changes. So they're running the ball slightly less overall, but they're running it earlier in the downs, right? So they've had an uptick of about 6% in early downs running the ball and a slight downtick of about 6% into total rush attempts. And then some tweaks in terms of how they run the football from the Kellen Moore days.
So that's interesting because, I mean, granted they've played the Cowboys have played bad teams this year, but you said something there about with the running from the Kellen Moore days. Do you think with the Cowboys offensive coordinator this year, is it a lot, keeping in mind they've played bad teams, is the Cowboys offense this year better than last year, or is it about the same?
Got the butter for you. What do you want to get?
Well, they were good on offense, as you know. They were never bad on offense. So Brian Cornelius Schottenheimer didn't make any wide, giant, sweeping changes because there weren't wide, giant, sweeping changes that need to be made. They just wanted to tweak. And so I think what I would say in terms of the tweaks, the things that are different, I think that you'll see a more conventional running game of that. I mean, there were some like fun, creative things that Kellen Moore did that I think they've sort of gotten away from. But also those things required more precision. And of course, Zinni loves precision. But here's the problem with precision is when something's based on being extremely precise, that means if you aren't extremely precise, it all kind of falls apart. By going to things that required maybe that you don't have to be as finely tuned to execute it, which is what they've moved towards, with the compressed way that you must teach nowadays, because once again, we just talked about less contact, fewer contact practices, less overall time at the facility. So the way the game is taught has to be different now. You're sitting guys home with their iPad or their whatever and saying, work on this at home, much more than, keeping guys there, for 2-a-days, which used to happen in the old days.
Right. So that's why a premium is placed on what you put in on coaching points. And I go back to the Eagle offense in the NFL I designed, where surprisingly to me, Tony Franklin, who was former Cal offensive coordinator, wrote that there was more detail in my playbooks than playbooks he had seen. And I was shocked. And the detail I put in were coaching.
Wow.
When I had the pleasure of visiting the Dallas Cowboys in 1979, when they were on 6116 North Central Expressway on the 11th floor, and I saw the playbook, it was smaller than I expected. But what was interesting? Bill and PJ, they had little dots by the defenders, like the defensive end. They had the angle that the defensive end was supposed to get, and they had little dots. The little dots were the feet, exactly where the feet were supposed to be lined up. And so
Oh,
this was
wow.
1979.
That's cool.
Right. So my point is, you have to design in specificity if you want people to remember. So when I talk about precision, it's not so. That's the kind of, I'm talking about precision of instruction, precision of thought in terms of what you want the player to do, so that precision, as Bill could call it, may very well be based on imprecision, which is, for example, a receiver like Mike Taylor when he was playing, breaking off a route, a fly route, because he realized the defender was way over him, and next thing you know, he's running an out pattern, he's wide open. Other coaches would tell him not to do that. Bill Walsh said, "That's great, that's great, that's great." And I mean John Taylor. He said, "That's great, okay?" And so what happens, that gets designed into your playbook. And my point is, a lot of coaches are not good at putting in instructions for their, they're good at pattern modeling, right, Bill?
Right.
You know, how many pass offensive coordinators are pattern modelers, right? But when it comes to actually understanding the depth and timing and stuff that you should have learned in physics, forget it.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
So Mike Solari, so this will be very familiar to Seattle. Mike Solari, of course, comes over to the Cowboys from Seattle. So the run blocking, a lot of what you're seeing now, it'll be very familiar to anyone who's played for the Seattle Seahawks when Mike Solari was there. They're moving more to a more downhill, gap-oriented run scheme. So when you are in zone, there's, everyone has to be on their read step, and there's all these things about precision. Back to that again, right? Because for zone blocking to work, especially work at the highest level, everyone has to move. It's like almost watching those Spartan phalanxes, right, where they use each other's shields to defend each other and all stuff, right? But once there's a gap in the shield wall, it all falls apart. Somewhat the same thing with the stepping, right? The steps have to work in zone blocking for it to work. Like if some person is a little too slow, a little too fast, 6 inches this way, 6 inches that way, now someone's shooting through and boom, a backside defender is tackling your running back 3 yards in the backfield. But they've moved now to, like I said, to more of a old fashioned, I don't know, pick a term, trying to get bigger, trying to maul defenders at the point of attack, and not so much moving them through, that wave, almost literal wave of flesh that you have when you have in zone blocking. More, I'm bigger than you, I'm stronger than you, I'm going to dominate you, right? That's what going towards that gap oriented downhill scheme moves towards.
Right. Well, and I was listening to a few stats last week, or no, this was like, I think Monday I was listening to this about with going to the defensive side of the ball and blocking and tackling, and there's so many penalties this year on the defensive side of the ball with unnecessary roughness and all these calls that, one, a lot of them aren't blatant calls that just don't make sense. And I had listened to something. I wish I knew this. I could find the stat, but like the NFL, all of last year was like total of over $15 million in fines for the total season last year. And now we've hit that same number, but only through 11, 12 games. And I'm like, where are you supposed to hit on the defensive side of the ball? You can't hit above the head or above the neck, which, I mean, I understand that. I get that. You don't want to injure your neck or your head. I understand that. But then you can't hit below their waist or whatever. Where are you supposed to hit? It's hard to aim just right at the chest area. It's hard because you're with physics, you're running full speed at somebody trying to tackle them. Where are they supposed to hit? It makes no sense to me. And, with that kind of thing, but, yeah.
Yeah, well, they are in essence trying to get you to hit in a strike zone. And they want you to basically be almost like the baseball strike zone, armpits to knees, right? That's where the NFL is heading. They're saying you can have at it between armpits and knees, but especially on quarterbacks in the pocket, pretty much everything else is strictly verboten.
Right.
Hey guys, how about making the uniforms so that they're better protected, but then they have these little crosshairs at the armpits and knees, right? Just saying.
Yeah, I mean, you can do a lot of things with the helmet sensors and whatever else if you're trying to teach, where you can and can't hit. You could have it set up during training camp where they have synced up with the helmet sensor that you already have in there, which is why you have all the data about, how fast someone was going and all that good stuff. So you could sync that up with sensors that are put in the uniform. That's Zenny's sort of suggesting, where if you are in the good area, it sends data saying this person is consistently hitting in the right area. And then, while you're still in training camp, if someone's consistently hitting in the wrong area, the no-no zones, before you get into games where penalties and whatever happen, you can correct. You can say, hey, couldn't help but notice, RJ, you're consistently hitting too high, or things like that.
Right.
And it takes
we want Snoop Dogg as a sponsor.
It takes a lot of repetitions to reteach or to unlearn, right? Because it's easier to learn than to unlearn, right? Because you have this stuff that's already implanted. That's why some people say I want someone who has no habits as opposed to bad habits. Because
I'm sorry to interrupt you. I was thinking about Kareem Jackson, and all of the hits that he's made. Zenny was saying something. What'd you say, Zenny?
I said, "Oh yeah, you're right." I was just I do. My brain just went ding. You're right. You're absolutely right. Yeah.
But thinking about that, I'm like, coaches are having you learn something so long, and then you're having to tweak it. Like, it's so different than what it was just 4 or 5 years ago. Well, really 2 years ago. It's so much different. And I don't know if we blame technology or what, but I mean, yeah.
This is a different understanding of what is acceptable. Zinni and I are able to quite easily remember how different the level of acceptable violence was in the NFL. Dan Pastorini, by the end of his NFL career, could barely tie his own shoes, right? And that was completely normal for a guy that played that long. Quarterbacks would, by the end of their careers, have shoulders that would just slip out of joint by themselves. And, towards the end of Namath's career, he'd have to drain his knees before every game, and they'd use a double lock gauge needle about that big around to draw all the pus and blood and everything out of each knee. So it was just a different game. Guys would take things that would stun an elephant to go out there and play football in those days. And thankfully, I don't think it's a bad thing that we're saying, hey, Dale Hackbart went out and played a football game with a cracked vertebra. Right, exactly. The game was different. That's what I'm pointing out to you.
Right.
Guys used to play with things that they had no business playing with. And then years later, they can't do anything. I mean, Gil Maines had his knee turned backwards on him. He stepped in a hole. The field where he was playing at the time was in such bad shape that he stepped in a hole. His heel stuck down in it, and his legs stopped, and he kept going, and his knee literally bent back the other way. Ooh. So, look him up. Gil Maines played for the Detroit Lions in the 50s, early 60s. Ooh. But the game was incredibly violent in those days. Right. And yes, guys would be wrecked. 10, 11 years into the league, they'd be wrecked. So I'm not against movement towards player safety. In fact, I applaud a movement towards player safety. And some of it's a little,
and I do too. But
some of it's a little hypocritical because you keep adding more games. You can't really care that much about player safety. But that's another show.
And Bill's absolutely right. Let's not forget, PJ. the men that play today and the women, think about it, they're superhuman.
Yeah.
I mean, you have women. I know a friend of mine, Anna. She's a young lady power lifter. She can power lift, and my other friend Christy just power lifted 582 pounds 2 days ago. It's on Instagram.
Whoa.
Yeah, think about it. She did it not once. She lifted 582 pounds 3 times like it was nothing.
Wow.
Okay? That's the era we're in. And so think about it. It's the same kind of equipment. You're asking wear the same kind of equipment, but these folks can throw cars. I mean,
Right.
getting to that, imagine where they're going to be 15 years from now. Heck, maybe 5 years. You never know, right?
Yeah.
It's crazy.
So that's why the officiating and things like that have been trying to tighten up certain areas, and some of it is insane because, like, how do you ask someone to sack someone but not land on them? I mean, some of these things I hope they revisit some of this because I don't know how that's supposed to work. But
no, I don't either.
Yeah, because physics, once again, we talked about it. Like, you can't simply levitate.
But Bill and PJ, don't you agree that we have to have better uniforms? I mean, you can only make you can only make the style of play, safer to a point. But how far do you go? Do you make it flag football, right?
Yeah. No, you're exactly right, Zenny. I think something has to change with the uniforms so that it protects the players better because you, like you said, you can only go so far with everything else. It's got to come down to uniforms at the end.
Yeah. Well, getting back to this particular game before we go too far afield, the 3 things I'm going to look for Seattle if they do want to hang around. Like I said, outgaining Dallas in terms of yards per rush. They need to win that battle. 2, they need to take what they're being given. So there are some teams you can try to hold the ball, try to get a little something deeper down the field. Not Dallas. No, the ball needs to come out. And if it's not there, throw it away, run for a few yards and slide, whatever. But don't get greedy because pigs get fed, but hogs get butchered. And then the third thing I'll say, and this is more on the defensive side, playing it safe, right?
Right.
It's very frustrating. You're giving up a lot of little plays, things like that. But you're counting on eventually someone getting called for a hold. Something. It doesn't feel very brave to play football that way. And as a defensive play caller, I would get frustrated and want to start sending blitzes and things like that. But this is this particular team. It makes sense to wait around for them to make a mistake, to play it as safe as possible, keep everything in front of you. I believe if they're able to do that and not get gashed via big plays, they have a chance to make this a very close game, very compelling game. They are swimming uphill in essence. I mean, they're playing in the what I used to call the Taj Mahari, and they are facing a talent disparity. Like Dallas has more talent, but Dallas also is a team that can get frustrated, can make mistakes at times. So I would do everything I could to frustrate them. Blitz very occasionally, very carefully, probably fire zone blitz, but don't do it very often, very judiciously. Right. And like I said, where you do have your advantages, I do feel good about attacking the slots, attacking the seams on this team. Get your tight ends involved more. Why they don't throw the ball more to the tight ends, I'll never quite understand, but this is the time and place to do it. That's something that still isn't the greatest for Dallas. Dallas does a great job of locking down on the outside, but there's some business to be done in the seams. There's business to be done in some of those little hole shots, as we call them, between where the corners sort of drop off and the safeties pick up. You can get some business done there, but don't look for, don't try to get your deep post game going. This is not the game for that. You'll end up on your back.
Right. So I have to ask, since game's actually, I think, starting.
Starting now, yes.
What is that? We'll do score predictions for the evening. Zenny, what's your score prediction?
Seattle 27, Dallas 14.
Okay.
Upset.
You are going with the upset. That's
Bill,
very courageous. Very courageous. I think Seattle will keep it close for a little bit. I think Seattle keeps it close for a while, but eventually Dallas pulls away 31-20.
Ooh, I like that. I think I'm going to go closer than that. And I'm going to say with the high-scoring offense, I'm going to say 34-28.
Okay, that is a high-scoring game.
So I think if both offenses can get it going, I think they'll be just all right. But I think Dallas will pull away in the end, especially with their high-powered offense. I think they'll pull away and finish it in the end. And yeah, so. But anyway, well, I appreciate Zenny and Bill for coming on and
thank you for putting up with my unorthodox way of doing this. But hey,
yes, sure, no problem.
That's all right.
I'll be dropping. Tomorrow. I'm dropping some coaching carousel videos on the channel for talking about college football coaching.
Ooh.
There's a lot of coaches hired and fired in the last 48 or so hours, so look for that. And I'll be talking about some of the coaches I hope get a chance to get an opportunity, because the one good thing about coaches getting fired, which is obviously a very sad thing, is that hopefully some newer, younger coaches will get a shot.
Right. Yeah, that's going to be I'm looking forward to those tomorrow, and hopefully maybe within the next couple of days I can do a live stream and we can talk the games going on this weekend, with so much going on with this weekend with the NFL. Who's going to be the next head coach to be fired in the NFL? I don't know. There's quite a lot of them, as we talked about on Sunday. Yeah. There's quite a few of them.
It'll be a nice tight race. I think both Brandon Staley and
you want two more of those?
And Coach Rivera are probably locked in a pretty good race there. And obviously, I think Belichick at least finishes the year out, but I think he's going to have a tough meeting with Mr. Kraft, and we'll see what comes out of that.
Two more of those? Mom, you want me to get two more of those?
In danger. Todd Bowles is probably on fairly thin ice down in Tampa as well.
Yeah. It's gonna be definitely. It's gonna be interesting. So, well, I'm gonna end the live stream so we can get out of here and go watch this game. Oh,
exactly.
Can I
look forward to it.
Yeah, go ahead, Zenny.
Yeah. First of all, this is the inaugural. This is PJ's first managed live stream. Congratulations!
It is.
Please.
Back for what's been 5 years, something like that.
Something like that.
Have StreamYard before, right?
True, that is true. So I'm glad to be back. So looking forward to doing live streams again, talking NFL, and looking forward to it. So thank you, Zenny, for letting me come back, and look forward to the future with Zenny62 Media.
Got it. Yeah.
So
hey, he's a shareholder, folks. Be nice to him. These are shareholders.
Yes.
Which means they have my in their hands. Anyway.
All righty. Well, I'm going to end this. Y'all take care. Enjoy the game tonight. Zenny, you be careful going home.
Yes.
89 years. You think she's still kicking like she's 59 or something.
There you go.
Wow.
Good to see Mom always. Well,
got it.
Hey, thank you so much for having me on, and go Army.
Yes.
Go Navy.
Go Navy. All right. Talk to y'all later. Have a good one.
Take care.
All right. Bye.